Hey, this is Josh Johnson from DealMachine. I'm the VP of Sales for us, and I'm here today to talk to you about the very first flip I ever did that I found and marketed to through DealMachine to acquire. Now there are three main things I want you to take away from this discussion about my flip. Starting with number one, the first thing is when you're out driving for deals, don't worry about anything but the level of distress in the homes that you're looking at. In the end, we talk to people a lot of the time who care about, is it an absentee owner, is it an owner-occupied property? For me, this was an owner-occupied deal, and all I cared about the fact that the home had levels of distress to it that I could noticeably tell from the street. So therefore, I knew it was an opportunity because I knew that if that owner came to a moment where they had to sell with any sort of haste, they weren't going to be able to just list it on the market and sell it quickly because it wasn't a market-ready property. And so, in this particular case, I found this property last January, about January 2018. I ended up adding the property, started marketing to it. I sent 3 postcards to her. She responded to me the day after she got the 3rd postcard delivered to her property. And her call to me was essentially, hey, I just quit my job yesterday spontaneously. I need to move back in with my parents a few hours away, and I don't want to make another mortgage payment on this property again. And so for us, we really quickly established the timeline of when we had to sell. About 3 weeks later, we established the fact that really what she cared most about was just getting out of the property, not making that mortgage payment, and covering off any of the debt that she had in the property itself that remained. And so for us, we were able to really quickly come in, work together, establish a purchase price that worked for both of us, establish a close date about 3 weeks later, and it became a call to a signed contract later that day, all within the very same day. So again, when you're talking about properties that you're marketing to, don't worry about the owner type, worry about the level of distress, because that level of distress is the indicator that while you're driving for deals, you are going to find a home that nobody else is going to find because of that distress indicator that only you can find while out driving. The second thing I want you to take away from this experience for me is find a partner to help you tackle the property in the most profitable way possible. And so for me, I did not have the capital set aside to fund the actual purchase price, fund a flip, or anything like that. So I was looking at about a $7,500 to $10,000 wholesale profit if I went that way. I had spoken to a few buyers, had them lined up if that was a route I went. However, instead, I found a friend and a partner who is a real estate agent here in Raleigh, knows the market really well. And so on top of just being a partner that could fund the deal, was also had some experience in real estate in the area that he brought to the table. And so for me, I was able to actually take down the house directly, tackle the renovation and the flip itself. Ended up, instead of making $7,500 to $10 grand like I could have, made about 20, 22 grand. Each of us made about 20 to 22 grand instead. Took obviously more time and effort because we managed the process for the flip, but in the end we made more money because I was able to find a partner who could help me tackle the project in the most profitable way possible. The third and final thing I really want you to take away from my personal experience with this flip is that when you're working with contractors, have a plan on how to find good ones, how to make it a competitive bid process, and be prepared to deal with the different types of bids that you'll get in an organized fashion. And so for me, I knew going into this that I had never done a flip or renovation before, even to my own house. So I really didn't have a lot of context on what different types of projects should cost, how much a countertop should cost, how much different cabinets should cost, or if I should paint them or replace them or anything like that. So for me, step one was, how do I get as many people involved in the process as possible from a bidding standpoint, so I know I get a competitive bid, I learn a little bit in the process, and I find people that want to work with me as an individual. And so for me, the first thing I did is I made a 3-page sheet that I gave to every single contractor with every single project that we wanted done as a part of the renovation. So obviously this took me a few hours up front, but what it did was a couple different things. One is it communicated to contractors right off the bat that I was really organized in how I did things, and it made them feel very confident in putting together a bid because they knew there weren't going to be a lot of variables later on in the process. Two, I set in that spreadsheet, I set 2 dates that everyone was supposed to come to the property in 2 2-hour periods and tour the property, walk through it, and see what they needed to see of the property to get the information to give me the bid. Now the great part here is I timed these so everyone was there together. So these contractors knew that although they already knew they wanted to work with me because I was really organized in my process, but two, they knew that it was going to be a competitive process and they weren't just going to be able to give me any price and I was going to say yes to it. They knew they were competing against all these other people that were also really good contractors rather. And then the final thing that spreadsheet and that sheet gave me in this situation was it allowed me to compare all of the bids side by side. One of the most difficult parts about working with contractors that I found out, even having the spreadsheet, is that everyone has a different format in how they'll present their bids, what they recommend doing, whether or not they split out materials costs or not. So I made them standardized where I split all services and materials costs completely out so I could compare direct services to direct service prices. And it just gave me the opportunity to make sure that the bids I was getting and reviewing, I didn't have to spend an extra 3 hours adjusting the bids, making sure that they were really comparable. I was able to right off the bat know this bid was the same exact service as this one, and I could tell from a price standpoint what the differences or what the difference in price was, which allowed me to choose a contractor faster and again set us up for success, I think, in the long term of the project. So again, those are the main three things that I think you can take away from my experience. First and foremost, market to every property that has distress. Second, find a partner that can help you tackle the project in the most profitable way possible. And third, be prepared in dealing with contractors, specifically, in my experience, having that spreadsheet and just documents of my plan of attack to give to them at the front end made that whole process a lot more smooth than it could have been if I was just trying to answer questions over and over again in person. I was able to always refer back to that spreadsheet. So it made a really big difference. Just to give you a final summary with this project, our final numbers were about $119,000 purchase and acquisition price, including closing costs. It was about a $32,000 renovation. And we ended up selling for initial agreed upon price was $215,000. We had to come down to $212,000, unfortunately, because of a poor evaluation of the property from the appraiser. And in the end, though, again, sold for $212,000 with a bunch of profit. Obviously, back out some realtor fees and stuff like that, and we made about $20,000 each.